we need to start creating the world we want to live in. So that's the title of this talk. We go back to it again. Seeing with real eyes, seeing the reality that we're really in, and realizing with awareness. And that word is used very specifically, not consciousness, because consciousness is part of the containment field. You know, it's the new age, everybody's talking about expanding your consciousness. Well, consciousness is nothing but the creation of our minds. And there's an individual mind consciousness system, and there's a collective mind consciousness system. And it is, in fact, the beast of revelation. And guess who created it? We did. There's nothing outside of us. There is no we versus they, us versus them. We have met the enemy, and it is us. Okay? That's the rub, but that's also where the power lies. Because if we take full responsibility for being our own enemy, then we can take it into ourselves and we can transmute it and we can transform it. That's why this is about transforming the world we are bound in order to create the world we wish to live in. Okay, we are free will beings at one level. At the same time, we are completely and absolutely pre-programmed. The depth of mind control and the containment system that I'm talking about goes way deeper than any of you, and I can guarantee that any of you understand yet. Everything that you think you know about all the metaphysical concepts and all the new age and even the old age, the traditional stuff, whether it's in the Bible or it's in channeled material or whatever, that people have spiritualized and said is sacred, is nothing more than a description of the prison that we are in. Because we have allowed ourselves to be put into a containment field that we basically call the legal and monetary system. In law, it's called the civitas, the civil body. In Latin and in the Roman system, the civitas is that, the civil body. It's what contains the mass population. And as I said yesterday, there are only two things necessary for the system that we're in to be implemented. It's the symbol of the two pillars, the line of the king and the line of the priest. That's all that's necessary to lift us off the land and put us into the civitas and put us as the civil body and utilize us as a battery with our consent. Remember when I talked about yesterday, it's all based on consent. To put us collectively and individually as the battery that creates this hologram. Because this body has an overlay. People call it the chakra system. It's not what most people think it is. It's not some spiritual thing. It's actually an energy extraction device that we were put into a containment within. Anybody here heard the phrase, as above, so below? And how about as within, so without?
Absolutely.
All right, you got both sides of it. Imagine that's a cross. But you're only seeing two sides of that, okay? A two-dimensional image. If we were to move it a little bit, and you could see what's behind that two-dimensional cross line, what you would see is two infinity symbols, going like this, as above, so below, and like this, as within, so without. But you notice if I were to do this so you can see that infinity symbol, it's an infinite loop. It's an infinite mind fuck. Okay, we are fucking ourselves. Excuse the phrase, but that's the truth. Okay? Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, earth, heaven, earth, heaven, earth, heaven. So we think this life is for the pits, so we want to go to heaven, and heaven's going to be great. We're going to sit up there, whatever our belief system, we're going to be vibrating with, you know, whomever is our particular flavor, and we're going to be saved. But you know what? Heaven is nothing more than another containment system. Okay? But I have good news for you, which is that that's already been collapsed. Okay? That's why you see the matrix falling apart. So we have allowed our free will to be abrogated, or we've abrogated it ourselves. We're actually will-less in this system. It's actually embodied in what's called the Lord's Prayer, which supposedly were the words of a man called Jesus. But those words of the Lord's Prayer actually were not put in the language that we understand in the English language until 400 to 500 years ago. The word Lord did not exist thousands of years ago as we understand it. There's only one Lord on this planet. He's called the Lord Mayor of the City of London. And who is the Father? El Papa. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. In other words, the Pope, who is in heaven, which is called the city known as Vatican City, which is heaven in their construct. His name, and only his name, is hallowed, okay? Because he is the vicar of Christ. But Christ simply means he who is elevated above the polarity of the mass collective hallucination that we call consciousness. So thy will be done, or the other way around, thy kingdom come. Okay, thy will be done as on earth as it is in heaven. Heaven being Vatican City, earth being the rest of the globe. The Pope says, I am the vicar of Christ. Who is the Christ? We are, because we are actually creation. We are one and equal with this concept of creating. So the vicar of Christ is our projection of that, and 1 billion or more beings on this planet call him the Father. So our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Well, how about my name? No, it's just his name, right? Thy will be done. We're projecting collectively our will outside of ourselves. So his will, or the collective will of that which is outside of ourselves, we are saying, yes, your will be done. Gradually and systematically, incrementally, we have spiritualized these things outside of ourselves. So we've turned our prison into our concept of our pathway to salvation. It's all a variation on the same thing. We've always allowed ourselves to be entrained in these projected belief systems that there's something outside of us that was going to come and save us. But the real clue is the only way out is in. So when we talk about taking our power and authority back into, within, and as ourselves, we're talking about ceasing the presumption of consent, severing the contracts and the agreements by which they operate. A sestike vi means literal translation from Latin and French means it is you who are the life. C'est tu, que vis. It is you who lives. Transliterated, it means basically beneficiary of an estate. Literally in law, it means the life by which an estate is measured. So we are all an estate. Remember I said we're in a landed estate. In law, this is how property is held. When I said yesterday that the Pope issued a papal bull in 1302 called the Unum Sanctum, and there were other papal bulls that followed the next 200 years, but that was the starting point. He expressed the first testamentary trust. A testamentary trust is a trust created for death. My last will and testament. Because what they were going to create is the civitas, the civil body, as the containment field of all of our life force in an artificial construct, a fiction in law, that all of our living beings were considered dead fictions. It is, as I said yesterday, a cult of death. So the Pope created the first testamentary trust and put all of us in there. And so trust law and estate law are the primary components of how we are put in the containment field. So Sesta KV is the beneficiary, the life by which a estate is measured, because the Sesta KV must be alive for the estate to be held. And when he dies, it's passed to the heirs, who then become, or the heir, the singular heir. That's why the firstborn male had to receive the entire estate. If you've looked at, the royalty and aristocracy, how estates were passed, it had to be passed through the patrimony. But it's all under the hierarchical pyramidal structure to the Papa, the Father in heaven. Back to the Sesta KV Act. A Sesta KV is the beneficiary of an estate, the life by which an estate is measured. And the passage from a principal to an heir. It's all about the passage of the estate within the larger whole of the global estate that the Pope established as a testamentary trust in 1302. A testament. When you go to their courts, what do? Testify. But for all you men who, when you get out of the shower in the morning and you dry yourself off, what are you drying in between your legs? Your testes, your balls that have been castrated, and you have put them under lock and key in their artificial court system when you establish a dead testament of your life force within the testamentary trust that was created. That's where where the word testify, testament, and all the rest of it comes from. It has to do with the castration of that masculine principle that I talked about. So that's the passage of the estate. And so only the elite, of course, can hold the estate. They can only be the landed gentry. And so, for example, in 1215, when the Magna Carta was created, we've got all these people saying common law and the Magna Carta and jury of your peers, but it's only for the peerage, the elite, the landed gentry. You're not of the peerage. You don't deserve a jury of your peers. They may tell you you do, but you're off the land. You're in a containment field, so you don't deserve it. Okay, because you're a bankrupt. So a Sesta KV is the beneficiary. So the Sesta KV Act says, because men were going to see, when they use the word men, that was real men, landed gentry, not the landless serfs. They're not men in their world, in their reality. So the Sesta KV Act says when men would go to sea, they would be lost. They would be presumed dead. And we have no way to settle our estates, to pass our estates to the next beneficiary and name the new Sesta KV. So the Sesta KV Act provided for when a man goes to sea and is presumed dead because he does not return, then after 7 years, we are going to declare him dead, and the executors of the estate can move in to take control of the estate and settle the liabilities and the claims against the estate, operate the estate, accrue profits and proceeds until such time as it's passed to the next Sesta KV, which might be a minor. So when the minor becomes of age, it's passed to his capacity. Of course, some men went to sea, were presumed dead, were actually established in the record as being dead after 7 years. And they came back. Maybe they were enjoying an island life for 10 years, got tired, wanted to go back to London. They had to reclaim their estate. In the last Hobbit movie, when Bilbo came back, what did he have to do? He had to claim his estate. He had to prove who he was as the living beneficiary. You have to prove that you're alive because you're presumed dead. Because for as long as you're attached to a dead civil fiction, you are indeed dead. So you must come back and prove you're a living being. You must walk into life. We must settle the waters of commerce, because back to the vessel of commerce into which we were placed when our mother abandoned us and they severed the patrimony, meaning our father is not on the birth certificate in the way that legally says that we are the heir and beneficiary to his estate. So we become a ward of this, the estate, the estate, the state, and that's how they control all of the legal structure, through the fictions and everything else that everybody's fighting against. We don't have to fight it. The remedy is in the law. if you want to stop being the bonded surety and correct your status in order to have standing. Because only a man or a woman who has standing can state a claim. It all goes back to the Cesta Viac, because we're presumed dead, because we're a ghost on a commercial vessel lost at sea, like the Cesta KV. When a man goes away and is lost at sea, we're lost in the sea of commerce, because we bonded ourselves to the commercial construct of how what we call money is created as monetized debt. It's all under the UCC, the nature of a secured party and a debtor. In fact, we are the secured party. There's a vast amount of equity that we can claim only if we have standing, because a bankrupt has no standing. You cannot claim your estate or claim anything. You are chattel property. I am not chattel property. I'm a private American national standing on the land with status to state a claim, and I have done so. I've claimed all the equity that is behind my estate. I've claimed my ancestral estate. I've proven that I am alive. I've claimed my landed estate. I've claimed my DNA. What's really important? Status, standing, and capacity. This is where we get into the nature of law. Let me ask you all a question. Do you want to embody and hold the status of a bonded surety to a bankrupt franchise and be the perpetual, eternal, collateralized instrument for life negating and destroying fictions and law? Our current status is bonded as the surety, which means the collateral, guaranteeing a facility for debt, existing debt, former debt, and the creation of new debt. The perpetual extraction of our life force. Because what do we do all day long? We chase money, what we call money. It's not even money. It's just negotiable commercial paper that has a dual point of a secured party and a debtor. So the franchise is what people have called the straw man, the all caps name. It's what creates debt. It is a bankrupt debt facility in a corporate structure called the United States. And our status is the bonded surety that underwrites and guarantees that debt. It's no different than Morpheus in the movie The Matrix when he showed Neo the copper top battery and said, this is what we are. This is how our life force is extracted from us. This is how we contractually consent to being lifted off of the land, because our body is the land. This is known as a landed estate in how we approach the issue of correcting our status. It's what I said, that key phrase, status, standing, and capacity, which when you were born, you were voluntarily placed as a ward of the court and you were abandoned by your mother. And if you look on your birth certificate, she's called the informant. She put you in a form so that you could be registered and become part of the royal estate and property of the crown. All land, all flesh, and all souls. But this is the nature of your bonded surety to a bankrupt franchise, to a bankrupt corporation, to a global system in bankruptcy. Because bankruptcy is in maritime and admiralty law. It's the law of the sea. So when you were born, you were birthed. You came down the waters of your mother's canal. It's all water metaphor. And you birthed at the dock. The dock was there to receive you, and the port master took you in and registered the cargo of your being, your soul, your spirit, in the cargo of the physical body, which is now going to be informed into an artificial construct that you operate your whole life through. So our bodies are the landed estate. Everything I've just very quickly synopsized is how we have allowed ourselves to abrogate our standing within ourselves, projected outside of ourselves, agreed to be will-less, and allowed the external construct to be the directive principle. So what we have done is we've contracted and recontracted innumerable times. We recontract ourselves to that status over and over again. It's what I call and called 15, 20 years ago the enemy construct. And I composed a phrase which is, there are no enemies, there are only opportunities. So what are the opportunities? The opportunities are the opportunity to take full responsibility for what we are, what we've created, and not put it outside of ourselves. Because the minute you start attacking an enemy outside of yourself, you are in a polarity and you are locked into it. So you become the opposite of your enemy. I'm the good guy, he's the bad guy. So I want to talk about the practicalities, okay? Because our real status is to be a private American national. So private American national. A private American national has unalienable rights, cannot be liened. That means you cannot be bonded as a debt surety. That's all it means. So you hear people talking about constitutional rights and Bill of Rights and so forth. None of those exist within the civitas, the civil/public body, because you do not have substantive rights, rights of your substance of your being. You only have privileges that they call civil rights, because civil comes from the word civitas, that containment field. Will give you the illusion of rights, but there are privileges. The Lord, Mayor of London, giveth, and the Lord taketh away. He can give you civil rights, but if you do not follow his codes and his rules, he can take them away. The twin pillars, the king and the priest, the king holds all the land because we've allowed ourselves to be removed from the land. You cannot have law if you're not on the land. So all this talk in all of the law movement about common law and grand juries and all of that is all bullshit. It's real, but nobody who's doing it has the standing or the status to do that. You must be on the land to be able to have the standing to do that. The City of London is where something called the Temple Bar is. That was established by the Templars, who created the original system of travel and security for banking in the 1100s and the 1200s. Eventually, they knew they were going to be co-opted and had to go underground, so they formed a country called Switzerland that adopted that cross, the Swiss cross. That's the Templars. And they set it up in the heart of Switzerland to be the center of banking and control. So Temple Bar in the City of London is where they created the temple, because it's all about the temple religion. The temples have been the banks for thousands of years. And out of the Temple Bar and the four inns of court comes the Bar Association. Bar, for many of you know, but some don't, means the British Accredited Registry, because everything on this planet, down to the bananas and the apples that we eat now, have a barcode on it. It's all registered as crown property. It's part of the royal estate. Okay, so the bar associations of the world, the lawyers, are nothing more than captains of ships. They're called esquires, and the minimum office that you must have to be an esquire is captain. So they are captains of the ship, and their bar card is a letter of marque and reprisal to board your commercial vessel to plunder for booty and prize, to reprise it back to the crown, which is at war with you because you're an enemy of the state. So when you think, like there was the guy who was the optimist, I don't know his name, he talked about owning property. I think he was a technology, but somebody else was talking about owning land and stuff like that. You don't own any land. You're just a tenant, and you're the bonded surety for it. When you buy your house, were you buying real estate? Did you know that real in Spanish and Latin means royal? So you were just volunteering to be the bonded surety against the legal fiction title to create monetized debt through the franchise that is your name in all capital letters. It all fits together, absolutely, as an integrated whole. And if you're not aware of that, ignorance of the law is no excuse, and you're, as they say, pretty well screwed, blued, and tattooed. And the tattoo is a barcode on your ass so they can track you. Because you're registered as property of the crown, period. Royal estate.